we've got Steve who's going to talk about identifying a queen right hive, even if you don't see your queen. Is that right?
My name's Steve Amalong. A lot of you guys know me.
As
Some of you don't. Okay, I'm a mushroom forager too. I'm an outdoors person. So many of you know me. I've been doing beekeeping for about 15 years. I used to lead the queen team at CCBA. I actually live in Montgomery County, so because it's much closer, I now lead the MCBA, Montgomery County Beekeeping Queen Team. This talk is probably more focused for beginning beekeepers. I think experienced beekeepers, hopefully real good experienced beekeepers, know what I want to tell, what I'm going to talk about. And it's not identifying if your hive is queen right or not. It's another step that's not normally taught to new beekeepers, that a lot of new beekeepers don't know about when they see their hive and they think they're queenless. So that's really what it's about. I'm not going to go over the traditional things for identifying your hive if it's queen right. I'll briefly go over it, but this is what is not normally taught, okay? And I'm doing this because it's actually very important, and it comes up in the fall especially, okay? This is a situation that happens a lot, and you get these calls, and because I've been a leader of queen teams for the last 5 years, I get called, Steve, do you know where I can get a queen? And it's like, how do you know you don't have a queen? Have you done this? No, what's that? And it's like, do this first, okay? So it just comes up, and I really think everybody should know to do this. It's really super easy. Everybody, one of the biggest things you should do in beekeeping is making sure your hive is queen right, okay? Jeff Eckel has instilled that on me, and it's like I never did that on a regular basis, and now I do it religiously, okay? And I have extremely good results. I recognize problems early, like what George was saying, and I can address them before they become a big problem, and I correct it. If you do it wrong, if you don't follow this step in the fall, you might do it wrong. And queens right now are going for $50 a pop. And putting a queen in at this time of year is a touchy situation. You can do it, but in a lot of cases, you really don't need to spend $50. So that's why I want to just teach you guys this little, I call it a trick. I don't think it's a trick. You just got to recognize what's going on in the hive. Last year, when I check my hives, now in the fall, I actually check my hives every 5 weeks. Normally, it's every 3 to 4 weeks to make sure that the queen right. And this time, at the end of this month, I was checking all my hives to make sure they were queen right. 9 out of 15 hives would, if you just use the traditional ways, 9 out of 15 hives, you would have surmised that they were not queen right. There were no eggs, there was no larva, and very little cat brood. Okay, but because I've learned this over the years, I knew another thing that you got to do, and it's like, okay, I was patient and I did this other thing, and it's like they all had queens, and fortunately I didn't buy any queens at that time. So that's why I'm emphasizing and doing this now. It's very useful in the fall. Okay. The traditional ways for making sure your hive's queen right. Hopefully most of you guys know this. Look for eggs, of course. Look for larvae. Cat brood. That's okay. I actually only look for eggs or larvae. If I don't have that, I start to worry. Or you can look for the queen. Don't look for the queen. I know people who do go in and look for the queen. They end up squishing the queen. Finding the queen is like near impossible, especially if you got big hives. I never, ever, ever tell you to do that except in very rare situations. But there are lots of times in the stage of a queen when she's not laying eggs. That's what this talk is talking about. So when you have swarm cells or you have supersedure cells, it takes 16 days for them from the egg to the emerging. she won't be laying. You won't see any fresh eggs or larvae there, or if it's long enough for cat brood. So if you're looking for that stuff and you're going to surmise if you don't see eggs, larvae, or cat brood, you're wrong. You got to do more. Even and then when she emerges, she might take a couple of days to mate, depending on the weather. Again, you won't see that. You won't see those traditional things. Once she mates, I'd say it's 4 or 5 days before she actually starts laying, depending on the weather. Those periods, you won't see the traditional queen light signs that you've learned in your classes. And that's what this is covering during those periods of time. And one more, which I call the fall sabbatical. That's the situation that occurs now, or at least occurs on my hives every year, where you have a great hive and they actually, I think what happens is they go through their burst of laying their eggs, their winter brood, and winter brood lives longer than summer brood. And once they're done, she'll stop laying. And that's when I saw 9 out of my 15 when I were checking, there were no signs. Okay. Your queens will stop laying for periods of time. It could be 1 week, it could be 2 weeks. I've seen it 3 weeks where they stop laying. Okay. And it's like, oh, shoot, I'm in big trouble. And normally that's not the case. So most of this, think about it in the fall sabbatical terms. Let's see what else I missed. Okay. This step is so easy to do, you'll kick yourself. We used to do it on the queen team when we had problems raising queens at CCBA. We will always make sure we told people to check this step out, to do this step. As I said, experienced beekeepers know about it, but unfortunately, I don't think it's taught in the beekeeping beginning classes. We did a CCBA when we were raising queens, and we could not get our queen cells weren't ready on time. We had a very strict schedule. We had to have them ready. And when we ran late, which would happen because of weather or problems with the queen cells, George, you can, he knows all. You're decreasing your 3 week time that you need to raise a queen. In a lot of cases, the only way you can realize and see this is through the evidence of this step. Okay. Or when the weather's bad, when she should be going out and mating and she can't go out and mate because of the weather. Okay. That'll decrease your time. And when we would have to go in on the 3rd week, Saturdays, when we're looking for the signs of eggs and the mated queen, we couldn't see them and we had to use this step. This is also, I have to bring this up. This is also something that a step that I don't know if many of you have ever seen this. I highly, highly recommend it. There's a speaker, Landy Simone. Everybody should look at this. It's a fun YouTube that she does. It's a presentation called Reading the Frames. Okay. And it actually talks about the 4 signs of what you should do every time you open up your hive and do an inspection. And it actually goes through all the situations that you should be able to recognize and look for. And she does it in a test mode. So she'll show a picture, she'll show a frame. So, okay, what is this frame telling you? After I thought it was a great one. And when I do my mentoring and teaching, I always put this as part of my curriculum. But I said, after looking, I said, she doesn't have this situation on her presentation, which is a very common situation. And I actually conversed with her. She's actually changing her presentation and adding this to her presentation. Okay, she's a very good speaker. She does the presentation in a fun way. She'll actually present the frame, ask you, and then you can stop it and you can evaluate what you think it is, and then she'll tell you what it is. And this what I'm showing you is actually what I call the fall sabbatical. And it's in the spring, like I said, it happens in the spring, but a lot of times it's the fall. But I highly recommend you guys watch it. And she goes over a lot of what George went over. Here's the 4 things you should be looking at when you go in there. Like I said, I do my inspections in the summertime every 3 weeks, and now it's every 4 or 5 weeks because the chances of the queen dying are a lot lower if I minimize all my time going into the brood area. Okay, now we're getting to the solution. You ready? Now you can get to the solution. When you don't see the eggs or the larva, I only look for eggs or larvae when I go to queen right because if I'm only seeing cap brood, then depending on the time of year, I was like, hey, that's too late. She hasn't been in that hive for the last 10 days. Okay, I want to catch her. I want to catch a bad situation early so I can fix it. And the only times I have problems with risking a hive is actually when something happened to the queen or they had a disease. If you check and make sure she's been there in the last 10 days and you can fix it, you've got plenty of time to fix it. But I look for, so if you go through and you don't see eggs, you don't see larvae, you don't see cap brood, you're going to look for areas to frame. Oh, this is really hard to see. Yeah, online it's really easy. Okay, so let me talk it through. The colony knows what's going on. If there's a queen in there or a queen on the way, let's say there's a virgin queen or you've got queen cells, the colony knows that there's a queen on the way and they reserve spots, areas of cells on the frame. I know this is really hard to see, and on the center bottom of your uppermost brood frames, they will keep them clean and polished. So you'll actually, so if the frame is like this big, okay, look in your middle brood frames on the top box. If it's your top deep, I use mediums. Normally they filled up my top brood box with honey now, and I actually have to go into my second brood box. Look to see if there are spaces that are clean and polished. Polished just means they're keeping them super clean and they're actually shiny. If you look at them with a flashlight, I use a headlamp. It looks like they polished it. Okay, and you will see if there's a queen in there. You will see on several of the middle frames that there's a clear space that they've kept free and say, hey guys, don't put any honey in there. Don't put any bee bread in there. This is for the queen. She's here and she's going to start laying this week or next week or next week. If you see that, just wait and be patient. You've got a queen in there, even though you're not seeing eggs or larvae. Or if the fall sabbatical is long enough, you might not even have any cap brood. Okay? I'd say, in my mind, it works 90% of the time, and you're not wrong. You can't guarantee they know that there's a queen on the way, but she could also mate and during her mating flight, get killed. Okay, so those are the 10% where I don't think it works. Okay, and last year, like I said, 9 out of 15 when I checked, if you looked at traditional, you would have said, I need a queen. So typically when you see that, I wait a week and I basically put it on my calendar. Say, go in and see if you see eggs in there. Go in there. If you don't see it after those 5 days, be patient. It sometimes depends on the weather. Wait another 5 days. Almost every time you will see, oh gosh, she started laying. You guys know that big smile when you see it. It's like, oh, thankfully. That's usually what will happen. The other things I missed a couple things that I need to show you guys. So when in this bare spot, you'll see the bare spot up here. And on the edges, it's usually there's a clear edge of bee bread or honey. That's getting ready when she does start laying. Okay. And this one in the picture, and it's in actually the newsletter, but it's not a great picture. This one shows that if you look in there with a flashlight, you'll see that these cells are perfectly clean. Whenever I do see it, and whenever I do see this situation where I see the blank spaces, okay, I'm pretty much decided, hey, there's a queen in there. I'm not going to look for her. I will sometimes, if it's easy, I will actually put a frame of eggs or larvae if you have it. This time of year, you may not have that. I keep resource hives in my yard, so I always have frames of eggs and larvae that I can get because they're actually, these resource hives are nukes that I'm actually still building up late in the year. I just take a frame out there and I'll put it right where these empty spaces are. And I'm a conservative guy, and I will look in 3 days to see if they build supersedure cells. Okay, once in a while I'm wrong, but rarely do I find that situation. But since I got the frames, I put it in there, and I just cover all my bases. Okay, I recommend that if you've got it. It's very easy to do. Let's see. That's it. Now, one thing, the other picture is it. Oh gosh, this is really bad to see. So the next picture is basically. So this looks like a big open space right here. But if you look in all the cells, there's actually nectar in there. If you look closely, there's actually nectar in there. That's not a polished, clean space. And that's, if you're seeing that, then and you don't see any bare spaces, you probably don't have a queen. Okay. And if you don't have a queen this time of year, I recommend, if you're not familiar with it, talk to your mentors that say, hey, is this, I'm guessing this is the situation. What should I do? You got to, they could be laying at this point in time. Your hive may not be, if they're not laying, it may not be strong enough. You may have to do a merge. There's several different options. You could buy a queen cell. Again, it's an expensive route to go. I would recommend talk to your mentor if you're not finding those bare spaces. What was the other point I was going to say? Oh, I was going to say last year I had out of those 9 out of 15, two of those puppies did not start laying. It was actually the last weeks in November. They hadn't started laying. And me and Regina Roa, you guys probably know Regina. I said, Regina, these guys haven't started laying, but I got the bare spots. I said, let's go in and try and find the queen. Okay, and we went through both those hives twice. We went down to the bottom, up to the top. We didn't find the queen, and we was like, oh shoot, maybe I should get a queen. And I knew where to get a queen, so I lined up and got a queen. And I got the queens from a friend of mine. And I was about to put the queens in there because these were really strong hives. They had built up their winter brood, and I was about to put them in there. I said, let me just look one more time. It was the next day. Lo and behold, there were eggs in all the spots. Okay, so I didn't have to do it. But so that's it. Any questions? It's really a simple thing. As I said, I'm not going to do any fancy slides. This isn't rocket science. But take the extra time. Don't go nervous, crazy, and say, I need a queen. I need a queen. A lot of this happens this time of year, a lot, and you usually don't. Good question. Good question. So the gentleman said, if you saw the blank spaces and you did a follow-up or two to look for eggs 5 days later or 10 days later, and you didn't see, and you saw that there were either multiple eggs, would you see multiple eggs in there, or would you see nectar in there? I think that's the question you were asking. So it would be a combination of both. Now you probably won't see nectar in there because there's very little, if none, nectar to collect. So you might see there's still pollen being brought in. You might see bee bread in there or multiple eggs. Okay, but you would see the other signs and then filling it in, which is the classic laying worker. Do know that if you do have a new queen, If you do have a new queens typically in the first 1 to 2 weeks will put 1 to 2 eggs in a cell, and then they stop doing it. So if you did have that blank spot and you're seeing 1 to 2 eggs, don't think you got laying workers, because that could be your new queen exhibiting the typical new queen symptoms. She lays 1 or 2 eggs in a cell.
Maybe my brain is just overloaded, but so you said, if you see these blank spots, just wait it out. The bees kind of know what's going on. But then you also said, oh, sometimes I'll take a frame and put that in there. So what prompts that decision to put the frame in there if the bees know what's going on and you don't need to intervene? Like, how does that happen?
Because good question. So do I have to repeat that question?
No.
Okay, cool. Okay. Good question. So I tend to do all my beekeeping conservatively, and because I have these nuke boxes in my backyard, and I know I can easily just go in there. It'll take me 2 minutes and get a frame of eggs and put it in there. Just there is a very rare time where I've seen that there isn't a queen in there. Okay, very very rare, I would say, extremely.
Just like to back it up.
I'm always backing it up.
Okay.
I've lost 1 hive in 6 years, and I manage 20 hives a year. I'm not bragging, but whenever I see a situation, I make sure I correct it. Okay, and I you'll see on my calendar, go in and look for this. Okay, and I have certain days, so that's all I'm doing. Yep. And most of you guys don't have the spare nukes with the spare frames like I do. But highly recommend. Look at the Landy Simone. I just find it's a great teaching tool, and you'll have a lot of fun, and you'll find out how much you do know or don't know about judging different situations. Okay, thank you.
2 weeks ago, as a queen team, apiary, we just got fooled by the virgin queens existing. We missed the virgin queens, so we combined the 2 boxes. Then 1 week later, we see the marked queen is gone, and somehow we had the supersedure cells, and then we found the unmarked virgin queen or mated queen. I don't know how, in 2 weeks. So we just had that, did those procedures you mentioned, but still we missed that virgin queen.
So you were merging the hives and you missed the virgin queens. And that's actually, so seeing a virgin queen, and especially experienced beekeepers probably know the difference between a virgin queen and a mated queen, can tell that right away. But finding virgin queens this time of year, especially after they've done the winter brood buildup, it's extremely hard to see the virgin or find her or see her. That's why I recommend look for this bare spot, because if you had a virgin queen, you probably had this bare spot, this polished area of clean cells. So I would have said, don't merge that one. It's got a bare spot. She's there, but you can't find her. Okay? The bees know what they're doing. That's one of my favorite sayings about beekeeping. Don't override what they're already doing. If they're telling you by showing that clear spot, don't merge it. There's a queen in there. That's what I would say. Any other comments or questions? That's it. Thank you.